It's my pleasure to invite on this Shabbat to share in the Dvar Torah Kai Wodicka. Please come on. Kai has been writing religiously every Friday about the weekly Torah portion. And I invited him a few weeks ago and said, would you mind coming from writing to speaking? And he said, sure. Yeah. So here you are. We're looking forward to listening to what you have to say.
Woo-hoo. Yeah, I'm here to talk about Torah. This week, we read about counting the Omer. We're already partway through it this year, but this week's portion is one of the times when we read about it. It's 7 weeks of 7 days, the time between Pesach and Shavuot. In the agricultural rhythm of the land of Israel, it's the time between the offering of the Omer, the sheaf of barley, at Pesach, and the offering of the first grains of the wheat harvest at Shavuot. In rabbinical tradition, it's the time between the departure from Mitzrayim and the receiving of Torah at Sinai. We're counting the days until we get what nourishes us, whether it's food or spiritual teaching. In Kabbalah, 7 times 7 is interesting. There are 7 lower sephirot, 7 stages through which we seek to understand the boundless becoming the world. We think of them as a progression, but we also know that's an illusion. Within each sephirah is every sephirot, the same phases of transformation recapitulated in the context of its transformation. So the Omer is 7 times 7. It is, or can be, a journey through the sephirot. It's a chance for us to meditate on these aspects and how they interrelate, to make our own internal journey, to find where the flow of our energies is constricted and open the way for us to receive that which is given to us. I've been counting the Omer this year. I've been meditating on the Sephirot as I journey through these days. I won't say that I made it every day, because I have not. There have been days when I've missed. There have been days when I feel like I've really meditated, and there have been days when I've given it a quick mental glance in between items on my shopping list, and there have been days when I haven't even managed that. Still, I have at least made for myself some awareness of the practice. I've taken a few halting steps toward experiencing the journey from the transcendent to the immanent, from vastness to experience. In this year's count, we're currently in the Sephirah of Netzach. Netzach is one of those words that doesn't translate neatly into English. It means to be victorious. It means to endure forever. It means to make glorious. In the Kabbalistic tree, Netzach is the Sephirah of unformed physical energy. It's our physical vitality, but not the shapes of our bodies. It's the potential of all physical forms, without the specificity of any form. This unspecified, unformed physicality encompasses every shape, every possibility of form. It cannot be named as any shape or perceived as any particular form. And yet it is the energy that pulsates and vibrates through every form in physical existence. It seems fitting that this is our musical Shabbat. It's full of vibrations that we can hear with our ears and feel with our bodies. We can listen, we can experience, and we can be reminded of the vibrational energy that moves through us, like the peaks and troughs of waves on the ocean. This energy, this raw physicalness, endures in a way that specific physical forms cannot. We are born and die, we become damaged, but the energy of Netzach is unending. It fills us in every moment of our existence and carries beyond that existence as that which is eternal. Alongside our journey through the Omer, we've been going through Leviticus. In Hebrew, we call it Vayikra, and he calls out. This week's portion is Omer, he says. So, all in all, there's been a lot of talk. Moses is sitting there, listening, and then he passes on what he hears. Sometimes he repeats himself, but can you blame him? These words are meant to convey the patterns of practice for an entire people. They are to be the message that will guide them from generation to generation. No wonder some things seem worth saying twice. What Moses brought to the people of Israel was huge for them. He told them to stop doing some of their practices. He told them to start doing new ones. Whether we look at it as a difference in time between before and after, or as a difference between this people and those around them, these instructions speak of change. And, of course, we and the world have continued to change. We look back and see the existence of any sacrificial practice as strange to us. Our lambs and doves have become symbolic, and that is a difference no less drastic than how, in these instructions from Moses, they became lambs and doves. Still, we read the text. We think about what those symbols might mean for us today, here, now. No matter what tribe our ancestors come from, whether we're here as Jews by ancestry or Jews by choice, we're still here. We're still a part of this community, of this journey. Our understanding takes on new shapes, but our desire to understand endures. We seek within our text for that which is eternal. We look at what has changed, at the process of change, and try to understand how the unchanging takes shape to guide us in this time, this moment, this journey. In this portion, one of the things we read about are physical defects. We are told, well, Moses is told, and he tells someone else, and eventually it's written down and copied over and over again until we read it ourselves, that anyone who has a physical defect is not permitted to approach the altar. We're told similarly regarding the animals brought as sacrifices. They must be perfect, without any kind of physical defect, or else they can't be offered. What does this mean for us? I mean, it's not like we're making physical sacrifices. Our tradition has evolved from there. But we still read these words. We still look for how they apply to our lives and our world. We seek what they have to tell us about our approach to being. Do these words imply that someone who is disabled or infirm is somehow less worthy? What do they mean for me? I am certainly imperfect. There are times when I have to use a cane to walk, when my fingers are too swollen to even make a proper fist. Does that hold me back from my approach to oneness? I'm sure the words of this portion have been used that way, but as I read, I notice something else. This person, who is borrowed from the altar, is still explicitly given the right of a priest to eat of the sacrifices, the holy portions and the holiest portions alike. They're included as well as prohibited. They are worthy. Of course, I'm not the first person to read this text. I'm not the first to ask how these words apply to the here and now where we live. In the Talmud, we can read how those rabbis discussed it. They thought that someone with visible defects shouldn't give the priestly blessing because it might distract people into staring at the person instead of keeping their focus on the blessing. And yet, there's a list of occasions noted when someone who did have such a defect was known to give the blessing, and these same rabbis approved of it. Why? The reason they gave is that the person was known to the community and thus their defect was no longer an issue to that community. In other words, the issue isn't with the person who has a deformity. It's with the person who notices it. I'm put in mind of a blessing. It ends with Meshaneh Habriot. The translation is something like, who makes there be differences in the creation. Tradition has us say this blessing when we find something or someone unusual, someone with something we find different about them. Often, it's something we might be tempted to call a defect. But this practice isn't about feeling sorry for someone. It's not about feeling superior to them. Really, it's not about them at all. The blessing is for us. It is for our own experience of diversity, for our recognition that the unknowable, the formless, that which is beyond all comprehension, has taken on the garments of not just one, but many forms, and the divine is equally manifest in all beings. There is no two-ness. There aren't people like us and people different than us. There aren't people who are perfect and people who are flawed. Our ego is what wants to make those judgments. It wants to take the reactions of our small-mindedness and justify the response of not like me as some kind of value judgment. It wants to point out the ways others differ from us and try to convince us that we're better than them because of those differences. The blessing is to remind us that all that is comes from Source. Every form, every shape, every perception of our physicality is only an aspect of that which endures, that which is eternal. Meshaneh Habriot. Our physical appearances are different. Our physical capabilities are different. We are all nourished by that same source. We are all sustained by that same triumphant presence. When we inhabit that expansiveness, we have no defect. No matter our physical form, no matter the things we can or cannot do, no matter the way we differ from others around us, there is nothing wrong with us. How could there be? We are manifestations of holiness. We, in all our forms, in all our faces, in all our bodies, are the faces and forms and bodies of God. When we set down our illusion of separation, when we set aside the ego that wants to value some forms over others and make judgments of capability instead of experiencing the wonder of creation, then we can approach the altar of awareness. It's not easy. We live in a world that's full of judgments about physical appearance, physical capability. We live in a world that's eager to point out differences and claim they mean that someone is deserving of pity or hate or fear. We make judgments about other people. We make judgments about ourselves. We become jealous when we see that others can do things that we cannot. We see ourselves as defective. Our pain holds us back from loving ourselves. Our fear holds us back from loving others. It is true that we have differences. It is true that our capabilities vary. What one person finds easy may be a struggle for another, may be a possibility for a third. That doesn't mean we should pity them. It doesn't mean we should feel sorry for ourselves. We can acknowledge the varied limits of our physical forms with compassion in our hearts. We can try to understand how to help others in ways that remember that they, too, are holy. We can try to listen, knowing that they are a refracted image of the divine. Meshaneh Habriot. The blessing calls us to let go of our judgments, to see our differences from from a place of openness and wonder instead of constriction. We, in all our shapes and forms, in all our variations and capabilities, are all a manifestation of the eternal. We are all nourished by our source. We are all worthy of that enduring presence. We are the one.
Yes,